Alright, today we're dealing with a rattle noise on a 2015 Chevrolet Impala Limited. And I'm showing you a tech service bulletin that talks about a rattle noise from the front or rear of the vehicle on cold startup. Okay? Now this noise pretty much affects the Impalas that had the 3.6 liter engine, the 2012 and 2013s, and then it carried on into the 2014 to 2016 Impala Limiteds. So basically it has to do with the Y pipe and the components heating up and expanding at different rates, and it causes a rattle noise. That noise you can reproduce by going under and you smack the side of the exhaust with your hand, and you can reproduce that noise. But this one had a noise like when it would go to shift, and you know, at random intermittent times you would hear a rattle, which after the vehicle's warmed up, this noise should go away, the one that pertains to this bulletin. Alright, now the most common cause for the noise on these cars is the rear engine mount. Here's a new one. Notice I'm twisting this. That's nice and sturdy. It's embedded in the rubber. The heat shield come off of this one when I was taking it apart. It was corroded in there and broke off. But this is a new one. This is the old one. This shouldn't turn at all. This should be directly in that. And the rubber is completely separated in this, in here. And the thing is, boy, the lighting ain't very good, but it's really hard to tell when you look from the side when this is in the vehicle. You really can't see much to let you know that this has occurred. But it's an extremely common failure, and it's kind of an involved fix. Not the worst, but you do have to remove the CV half shaft, the bracket that the engine mount bolts to, and for me to do that, that means I got to take the brakes off. There's the rotor, and I dropped the control arm down a little bit so I can pry this off to get the shaft out, but the motor mount will go right up in here. And I'll show you some of the steps reinstalling it, and it can give you an idea of what it takes to get it out. Kind of reverse engineer the repair. Alright, thanks. Alright, this is what it looks like installed back on the bracket. Alright, here's the mount installed. The mount's right here, obviously. My big fat finger's in the way. It's bolted on by there's four bolts, two on top, two on the bottom. And then there's two bolts from the mount that go through the frame of the car to hold it on. Alright, so there's what the first step I'm putting it back together looks like. Alright, next step is completed. We installed the CV shaft and tightened these three bolts. There's 1, 2, 3. Then what you want to do, you want to thread this nut on your ball joint, get it started before you tighten up your CV shaft nut, because it makes it harder to get in there when this gets pulled like that. When you pull that in, when you tighten that nut, it makes it harder to get to that one. You can still do it, but for me it's all about doing stuff the easiest way. So now the drive shaft is in, and those three bolts are tightened, and we'll move on to the next part. Alright, now we completed the next step. We tightened the ball joint nut, reinstalled that, tightened the axle nut, replaced the, let me see if I can get a view of it, the sway bar link, because we had to take that off to pry the control arm down. And we plugged the ABS wires back into the wheel bearing. Alright, I believe that was all for this next step. Alright, now we got the brakes installed. That was the next component. Everything's torqued down. Now we're ready to put the tire on. Start her up. See if she vibrates. Well, the lower engine mount fixed our issue. I guess it goes without saying. I don't think I mentioned it before. But you do have to support the engine when you're taking that back mount off. I use a little jack with a piece of 2x4 on it up against the bottom of the oil pan, and that way I can jack it up and adjust it to help me get the mount snuck out of that tight little spot. So, and then you'll need to support the engine, and then when you're done, you're going to need to add some transmission fluid, because some's going to run out after you pull that CV shaft out. And then you'll have to reconnect the battery, obviously. But this upper mount too, you have to check this one pretty carefully. This is a new one already, but they like to tear off right in there. But this one's good. But yeah, and in the manual, you know, they talk about disconnecting some of these, but I haven't really run into any issues. But I just did want to point out these are another high failure rate part on the mounting system of these vehicles. Alright, that wraps her up. The problem was solved, and this car's ready to roll.